What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Tailgate. I am your host, Michael Quattramani, and I'm happy to have you here. If you enjoy listening to what I have to say, then make sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so that you never miss an upload. Also, make sure to check out the podcast on Spotify if you get the chance, and make sure to subscribe to my other podcast, The 411. We'll be posting an episode actually either Thursday or Friday, and I will leave a link down below to the channel. So, like always, DM me questions or text me any questions, topics you may have and want me to cover in upcoming episodes. And as always, leave a like if you can. Helps me out, and I'd appreciate it. So, just gotta jump right into it. Over the last few days, I have taken some of the questions that you guys have asked me, because I've obviously asked you every single podcast. If you want to ask me questions or give me topics to talk about, I'll talk about them. So, I'm, bringing some truth to it. Today, I'm going to be talking about 4 things / questions that you guys asked me that I'm just going to cover. So, I'm really just going to talk about the Red Sox, Celtics, one team in the NBA playoffs, and then just a little Patriots news thing that came out that I'm just going to cover briefly. So, going to start off with the Red Sox. First question: will the Red Sox ever turn this season around, and will Andrew Benintendi finally start hitting the ball? No doubt about it, the Red Sox are going to be better this year. Since I talked about the Red Sox a week ago, they won their last 4 out of 5 games, and this team is starting to turn it around. They actually lost tonight to the Rays 8-2, so they won the last 4 out of 6 games, which is it's not bad. They beat the Rays and the Blue Jays twice. So Martinez, just his first home run 2 nights ago, ending his longest drought since 2014. But even with his poor home run numbers, he's still leading the team in doubles. So his batting can't be that bad if, he's leading the team in doubles. Mitch Moreland, 4th in the MLB with home runs. He's got 6 this year. He's also leading the team in RBIs. The Red Sox have kind of just been jumped on his back, and he's leading their front right now for offense. And you don't want to do this the entire year, but right now, it's not the worst thing to do. So I'm fine with it. Bogart's also finally starting to turn it around. He's leading the team in average, hits, and OBP. Pitching has gotten a lot better, too. Over the first 11 games, they gave up 5.6 runs per game. And not including tonight's loss against the Rays over the last 5 games, they were only giving up 2 runs per game. And obviously, that number isn't going to stay that low the entire season, but it proves that they're getting better. But as for Benintendi, I am concerned. Because before tonight, he was batting .056, which is atrocious. It's horrendous. Probably worse than the MLB for starters. And he has 2 hits on the entire season. He had 2 tonight. But prior to tonight, he had 2 hits on the entire season. I mean, look, this may be a slump, but I'm concerned it's going to be more than that. We've been hoping for Benintendi to really break out since he's been in the minor leagues. In his first season, he flashed a few times like, okay, this guy's going to be really good. And then last season, he kind of underperformed, didn't play as well as people thought he was going to be. So this year, people thought he was going to be a really good player, and he just hasn't been. And I think that people are going to really be questioning, if he's the real deal or not. So that's going to wrap it up for my talk about the Red Sox. But second topic today is a comment about the Raptors and how they have to be in the championship conversation now. And personally, I think it's really hard for me to disagree with this comment. I mean, the Raptors have been a team to be reckoned with all season, and they continue to enter the bubble, starting off 4-0, right, in the bubble alone. But then they got blown out by the Celtics by 25, with the Celtics leading as much as 40 points in that game. The Raptors lack the aspect that sets them apart from everyone else. There are 4 teams I think that can win the championship this year. I think the Bucks, I think the Celtics, the Clippers, and the Lakers, right? All 4 of those teams have individual things that set them apart from everybody else in the NBA, and even less than that, everybody else in the playoffs, right? Those things are what identify those teams and are going to be the aspects that can put them in the championship conversation and potentially make them win it, right? I probably sat here for a good 20 minutes thinking of what the Raptors have, and I came up with nothing. In the Bucks, I think that they have the best player in the NBA that can, for championship contenders, that can go in and just dominate games and take over games if they need him to. in Giannis. If they need him to, he can go in and just take over games. There's no other player that can really do that to the effect that Giannis can. I mean, I think LeBron potentially can, but I don't think he can this season. I think in years past he could. With the Cavaliers he had to, but he was also in his prime with the Cavaliers. Maybe towards the end of his prime, he was in his early 30s, but I don't think he can the Lakers. He's in his mid 30s. He's getting up there in age, and it's a hard thing for people to get used to. But I think we got to get used to him not being the LeBron that everybody's used to, if that makes any sense. I think, just talk about the Lakers, though, I think they arguably have the best duo in the NBA, and I think they have individual pieces that can contribute. I mean, they got guys like Danny Green, who's a little bit past his prime, but he's a good shooter. JaVale McGee, good center for them. They have Kyle Kuzma, who would probably start for 75% of teams, but because he's playing two of the best, not the best players in the NBA, but two of the best players in the NBA, he's a bench player, but he's a very solid player. Before Rondo and Avery Bradley, Rondo got hurt, Bradley got opted out, but before those two went out, they were both very solid players. I will say, though, I think the Lakers are a little bit overhyped. I don't think they're everything that people make them out to be, and I would not be crazy surprised if they got knocked out in, not early in the playoffs, but if they weren't to make the finals. That's how I'll put it. But for the Celtics, I think that they have the best all-around team, best scorers, for any team, best group of scorers, I mean, and they have a fantastic defense, probably top 3 in the NBA. They're second in opposing points per game. They have 4 guys on their team that can put up 20 points any given night, and there's not a whole lot of teams that can say that. So that's the thing that, for me, that's what sets them apart. They're a very efficient basketball team. They can move the ball around very efficiently. Great from the 3-point line, great free throw shooter. That's really all you can really ask for in a basketball team. I think the best way you can put it there is they're just a very efficient basketball team. Clippers, I think they are the most versatile, and they have great versatility. They can put out many different lineups. They can play with the Houston Rockets of the world, who don't play with any centers. They just play with Harden and Westbrook. They play a small ball lineup. And I think they can also play with the Giants of the world, like the Mavericks, with Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis and guys like that. So I just think that's what sets them apart, and they have but maybe the best 3 lockdown defenders in the NBA. Patrick Beverley, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George. I think Marcus Smart's in that conversation too, but those 3 guys are really good. And if you have 3 lockdown defenders on your team, I think that that's just a recipe for the NBA today, which just caters towards the superstar-driven teams. So if you have 3 guys that can take down 3 other superstars, and you have a really good offense, there's not a whole lot you can really complain about. That's what sets the Clippers apart. So back to the Raptors, though. I just don't think they have something that sets them apart. They have a good defense, but so does every other team I just named. Clippers have one, Lakers have one, Celtics have one, Bucks have one. I think all 4 of those teams are within the top 5 in defensive rating. So those teams are very good. I don't think that the Raptors have anything that really just sets them apart. So I don't know if I can put them in the championship conversation. I think based on them being second in the East, and they're going to be facing worse teams in the playoffs than they would if they were obviously the 4th or 5th seed. But I don't know if they can play with the likes of the Celtics and the Bucks, and you can even throw in the Heat in that mix. I don't know if they can beat the Heat in a 7-game series. So we'll see what happens. But that's where I stand with the Raptors. So, third question on the table for the day is going to revolve around the Patriots, namely Lamar Miller, who was just recently signed for a 1-year deal. And the question is, do you think Lamar Miller is going to have a big effect on the Patriots offense? Short answer is no, I don't. I really don't. Patriots have a pretty loaded backfield as is, so I just don't see how he can carve a big enough role out in the offense to make an impact. He's also going into his 8th season, so you need to question how much tread is really left on his tires. He's also recovering from an ACL tear, which can be an extremely hard injury to recover from. It also worries me that maybe the Patriots might be trying too many things at once. In this offseason alone, they're changing quarterbacks, adding a new running back, shifting players on the offensive line. They might be moving Joe Tooney to right tackle. And I'm guessing that N'Keal Harry and Mohamed Sanu are going to have bigger roles than they had in the season prior. So those are 2 new wide receivers that you have to work into the offense. You also need to remember that Julian Edelman is going to be 35 years old this year. Wide receivers normally don't play as good as when they're 35 years old than compared to when they're even 30 years old. So maybe this is the year that he drops off. I mean, we've been saying that for years now, but who knows? James White, he's been catching passes from the same quarterback his entire career. Now he has probably the opposite type of quarterback, in the system now. So who knows how he's going to play? And many people are kind of relying on him to be the second fiddle to Julian Edelman in the offense. So if he's not there, then who do you rely on then? And now, Cam Newton relied on tight ends for most of his career. He had Greg Olsen, who was a fantastic tight end for the Panthers. Tall guy, big guy. Now they have Dalton Keene and Devin Asiasi, two rookie guys, neither of them crazy big. And who knows what they have? Asiasi, probably the better receiver, but he's only 6'2". And Dalton Keene is a huge wild card. I mean, what is he? Is he a tailback? Is he a full H-back? Where does he play? What are his strengths? Is he a good blocker? Who knows? So these are a lot of questions that you got to answer. And the Patriots, normally at the beginning of the season, they need a few games to warm up and get into a groove. But this year, they really need to get off to a hot start because they have some tough teams they have to play in the beginning. They have the 49ers and the Chiefs within the first 5 weeks of the season. No, sorry, not the 49ers. They have the Seahawks and the Chiefs in the first 5 weeks of the season. You can't have slouch against those games, especially this year when you know that you're not going to have a 12-4 football team this year. So you need to play as good as you can early. Miller is going to be a nice addition to this run game. I'm not going to argue that. But I don't think it's going to be enough to alter the offense given where we are today. But we'll see what happens. I think it could happen. So to move on to the final question, this is going to be a relatively short podcast. Hope you guys enjoy that. If you do, please let me know down below if you enjoy a longer or shorter podcast, and I'll make sure to take it into consideration. So for the last question, we talking about the Celtics primarily. In your opinion, what will be the Celtics' weakness this upcoming season, and if they have any, will they overcome them? So I'm assuming that this is going to be in regard to the playoffs. I really like this question, though, because it forces me to be transparent about a team where I really don't see too many flaws. I think the biggest weakness as of now is their defense, but it's just because it's been uncharacteristically bad in the bubble so far. They had the 4th best rating in the NBA before the bubble, but since the bubble started, they've been ranked 21st out of the 22 teams that have been here. I want to chalk this up to coasting in the playoffs because they're pretty much cemented in where they are. They sit 3.5 games back of the Raptors and 4 games ahead of the Heat and the Pacers, who are tied right now. If this is an actual problem, though, they might struggle keeping up against teams like the Raptors and Bucks, who have top 5 defenses and potent offenses that can keep other defenses on their feet. Other 3 teams in general on their feet. They are expected to face off against the 76ers in the first round of the playoffs with the 7-3 monster in Joel Embiid that is no stranger to putting up a double-double with 35 points. So, they're not the craziest shooting team, which has been the Celtics' biggest trouble so far, is being able to guard against shooting teams. I mean, we saw them struggle. They won, but we saw them struggle against the Trailblazers when Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum just lit them up. The backcourt is just so strong, and I mean, we'll see what they can do. I think that right now it's been more the perimeter defense that's been struggling, but I just think I think they're coasting right now. I think they understand that they're basically where they are right now is going to be where they are in the playoffs, and they're just getting ready and resting up for the playoffs. That's what I think it's going to be. Hopefully they can play better and start to peak when they need to right in the playoffs. And I expect this team to be ready come playoff time, and I'm going to stick to it. I've been saying it really this entire time I've been doing the podcast. I think they're going to return back to their championship caliber team self because they just blew out the Raptors by 25 points. They were in a nail-biter with the Bucks. They just beat the Grizzlies tonight by a considerable margin. I mean, the Grizzlies aren't crazy, but they've been winning in the bubble, even with the subpar defense. So I think it just speaks to how good their offense is, speaks to how good their team is in general. Kemba Walker, great leader. Tatum starting to come back a little bit. I think he put up 30, I think it was like 36 2 nights ago. And Hayward put up 30 that night too. Scores are coming together. I think that everything is coming together when it should be. Defense has just got to pick it up a little bit, and I think we're going to see a really good playoff appearance from this team. So that's going to wrap it up for what I have today. We're going to jump into the 2-minute warning. Just recap each question I went over. To start off, will the Celtics ever turn the season around? They will. I'm not sure how much they're going to turn it around, but I'm going to step back a little bit from what I said earlier in the season about how this team is going to be in the playoffs. I think their ceiling is to make, just slide into the playoffs at the very end. I'm going to be realistic. I don't think that they're going to be too crazy, but just because of how poor their season started out, I think the bullpen has got to turn around at some point, and if they don't, then this team isn't going to be much better, no matter how much better the offense does get. Because again, I think the offense is going to be better. Even Devers hasn't really turned it around that much, and last year he was their best hitter. So once the bats start getting better, hopefully Benintendi can get better too. Starting pitching, we just saw a good start from Martin Perez tonight. Only allowed 2 runs in 6 innings. Nathan Eovaldi's been good so far this year. Pitching, they start turning it around. Offense turns it around too. I think we might see a good season from the Red Sox. May make it interesting come playoff time. Or towards the end of the season, may threaten to make a playoff seed. Second, talked about the Raptors. I'm so on the edge, on the fence of whether to put them in the championship conversation or not. I mean, on one hand, they are the 2 seed. They are a very complete team, but on the other hand, like I said, they have nothing that really sets them apart. In their offense, they don't have a guy that they can really rely on for the final shot, and I think you really need one of those in the playoffs. So, I don't know. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know if they are. Third, Lamar Miller affecting the Patriots. I don't think it's going to be that drastic. I think that he's going to make a nice presence in the backfield. I think it's going to hurt them, but I don't think he's going to be, a 1,000-yard rusher at all. So then to wrap it up, Celtics, what's their biggest weakness? I think it's defense, but I don't think it's that big of a weakness. I think they're just coasting, getting ready for the playoffs, resting up, and we're going to see a really nice, see them just breeze through the first round against the Sixers, maybe even breeze through the second round too, make a nice appearance for the Bucks, make a nice 6 or 7 game series, hopefully beat them, get into the championship, win Banner 18, and make 2020 not too bad. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this edition of The Tailgate. I hope you enjoyed watching and listening to this episode, and I hope to see you guys next time. Have a good one. I think I was born inside a cabana with diamonds and gold on top of the phantom.